The following episode contains or may contain spoilers. So if you're spoiler sensitive, maybe beware.
Yeah, you sensitive people.
Get out.
No, get in. All right.
I'm going.
Welcome to the episode.
Kayla's back. Yay.
Hey, Kayla.
So,
I found time in my busy Scottish life to talk a little bit more about comics.
You're so busy in Scotland, but super jealous. So welcome to the Phantom Zone. 3 fans, 1 podcast, and a sea of comics. I am Noah.
Kayla.
Jared.
And today we're talking about Birds of Prey. Not
Hell yeah.
the version in the movies, but the comic version, as we usually do with the deep dives before a movie comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
Turns out these are quite different.
Oh, you think? Just
Harley
a little
Quinn
different.
Is there?
I think this is one of the first times that we've done a deep dive where we know that it's different.
Yeah,
this is the
sure.
biggest difference I've seen in a comic book movie from the source material thus far. From what I can tell, just watching the trailer and what we know about the movie. Just real quick, thoughts on that? Is that bad? Is that good?
Bad.
Bad.
So I'm open to it. I'm open to seeing how it goes. Because, I mean, if you look at most of the Marvel movies and the big stories like Infinity Gauntlet and Civil War and stuff like that, they're not like the comics. Like the base of it, like the main villains there or the main struggles there, but what happens and who's involved is completely different. So
yeah, there's differences.
There's a cohesiveness to the Marvel movies in terms of like tone and just connectivity to the other Marvel movies that most of the time makes sense, and those differences are deemed appropriate. But in this one, it's like, here we have Wonder Woman, great, and then this movie, which I cannot picture mashing well with that universe. I just feel like DC's kind of all over the place with tone and characterization and accuracy to the comics, and this just seems like a silly thing, which could be fun, very isolated, but
yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest fear with it. I mean, I feel like DC is probably just like, you know what, we're going to do a bunch of different things and see what sticks. And I mean,
that's such a terrible strategy.
Yeah.
Marvel's going to have a similar problem with like Deadpool, honestly. So we'll see how that works. I mean, this may be a challenge all around. But more on that when we do the review of the movie.
Right.
We're here to deep dive an amazing team. And I have to say, I don't think, after we did a little research, I think this is a pretty original concept. And I don't think there's another team like it in DC or Marvel or anywhere else. Not really. So,
or at least one that's like stuck around. And that's kind of a fan favorite. For sure.
Where's Oracle?
Good question.
God. Okay, so usually when we do deep dives, it's usually on one character, and I explain their powers, and their absurd powers, and their really cool powers. But with this one, it just turns out that nobody on the team has powers. The core team, except for Black Canary. So, I mean,
correct.
Black Canary has the Canary Cry, which... That's it. That's all their powers. Everybody else can fight really well. Everybody, so everybody has, Oracle has her computer and hacking skills and
her brain.
Yeah, her brain. Huntress has her assassin abilities, and Canary has her badass fighting and Canary Cry. So that's really... Oh, and then Lady Blackhawk, which is a core member. She can fly planes really well.
I was looking her up just to give a sense of the character a little bit better, and I ran into a word, an aviatrix.
Yep.
Have you ever heard that before?
Yep. I have that in my notes.
Truly, that is a stupid word. Okay, moving on.
Well, the way she talks is kind of funny. I mean,
Yeah, no, wonderful. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think I can't remember what it was, but when I was reading stuff, one of the things that she says is, "Well, butter my butt and call me a biscuit." It's like,
Yeah.
Oh my god.
She stole that from me. So, I was
okay. So instead of going over the powers and everything, just to kind of fill time, but also to, I guess, explain kind of the roster of Birds of Prey. There's members that rotate in and out. So the Birds of Prey, think of them as like a sports team, and people get traded or somebody gets hurt and then they tap somebody else in.
Yeah.
So,
I'm busy. I want to go back to the Justice League.
exactly. So some former kind of honorable mention members, Big Barda, which is amazing, Jade Canary, Gypsy, Hawk Girl, Judo Master, Manhunter, Misfit, which is awesome as well, Hawk and Dove, Black Alice, Power Girl, Vixen, Starling, Katana, Strix, Condor, Catwoman, and Poison Ivy. Now, realize I did not say Harley Quinn.
Not once.
She's been in the comics. She just necessarily has not been a member. So that's where
And honestly, the membership on this team is not like as hard and fast as some of the other teams we could mention.
No, you just have like
Very
members.
much of like the Defenders, how you're like, you pick up a Defenders comic and it's a whole new roster, and then you pick up a comic 5 issues later and it's like, all new Defenders.
And even with, actually, that's a good comparison, because even with the Defenders, like away from like the editorial differences, like they've created a new team or something like that, in the comics, they're not usually a consolidated group of people that like co-workers, like the Avengers or the Justice League. The Defenders are kind of like, they all meet because there's a volcano exploding or something.
in the
It's
middle.
a little more yeah, it's a little bit more informal usually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you just have your main members that most of the writers that have written for Birds of Prey are usually in it. So, Batgirl / Oracle, Black Canary, Huntress, and Lady Blackhawk sometimes.
And then
Gail Simone's run.
And then it rarefies pretty fast. Like then it's like after Lady Blackhawk and maybe like one or two other characters, then it's like everybody's been in the series.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I even think Blue Beetle technically was in it for a bit, at least like a little run. So like Blue Beetle's part of the team too.
Oh, there's like a bunch of dudes on this team, which is a misconception that people have.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, I mean that's the power / roster of Birds of Prey.
The power of the roster.
I can go into publication history now. Try to make it as clean as possible. So, the straightest line through this. The first issue was Black Canary / Oracle, Birds of Prey #1. And that came out in 1996. So Birds of Prey in the long run really haven't been out as long as most comic runs. And fun fact, Birds of Prey isn't even mentioned as the team name until issue number 86.
Yep.
Yes.
That's hilarious to me.
And then
What do we
it
call
wasn't even
ourselves?
No, but it wasn't even that. Like, it's not, I think Lady Blackhawk mentions it. Like,
Yes,
what if we did
Jared,
this? And
let me
everybody's
get
like,
to it.
yeah, we're busy. We're just fucking
they
busy. We don't have time for your name
about
and
it. And then
stuff.
Oracle eventually is like, hey, Birds of Prey, you can do this.
Yeah.
So Oracle's higher subconscious was listening, I guess. Chuck Dixon was the original writer, and he wrote about half of the main first run, with Gail Simone writing the majority of the second half. And then Dixon focused basically just on Oracle and Black Canary. So the first half of the original run was basically like their dynamic, with Oracle being, of course, the more grounded, intelligent one, and Black Canary being like this bright-eyed idealist. For a street fighter, that's pretty impressive. And then Simone took over in 2003, and that's when she added the Huntress as a core part of the team. And then that's when you see other characters start like kind of adding up to the roster, like Lady Blackhawk. Black Barda was on there. Big Barda was on there for a while, and then just kept, like you had mentioned, in the roster started rotating and growing.
Mm-hmm.
Black Barda sounds like the coolest mashup character.
Black
It
Canary
really
and Big
does.
Barda.
Now I want that to be a character.
Hell yeah.
And then towards the end of the series, it started kind of rotating writers with various degrees of success until it was canceled in 2009. Gail Simone left to write Wonder Woman instead, and she was really sad to leave Birds of Prey 'cause she's very fond of all of these ladies, but especially Oracle, just like me.
She said doing that last issue of Birds of Prey, she would later come back, but like that last one before she left was physically painful.
Yeah.
I know. She loved it so much.
Hell yeah.
So it got canceled in 2009, and then DC relaunched it in 2010 during the Brightest Day stint, but only for 15 issues.
Yep.
Gail Simone came back and left after 13 of those issues.
Yep.
Oh, and
That
that series
DC titles were canceled for Flashpoint.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because that series was like actually did well, but they ended it because of Flashpoint, not because it wasn't like.
I put myself in Gail Simone's place, going like, "Oh my gosh, I'm back writing Birds of Prey, yeah, hippie!" And then like after realizing it's only going to be 15 issues, leaving after 13, going like, "Okay, well, anyway."
It's just like fuck you, people.
The New 52 after Flashpoint obviously relaunched it, but it was just, it kind of lost the core of what it was. Characters like Poison Ivy and Katana are now on the team, and didn't really have the same vibe, or really the same type of characters. It was relaunched for Rebirth, so at least we know Birds of Prey is a strong enough title to be there at the beginning of every relaunch. So in 2016, when Rebirth came, it was Batgirl and the Birds of Prey, so no longer Oracle, which I know we've talked about Barbara Gordon on like Women of the Bat or Ladies of the Bat family, but Batgirl's back with Black Canary and Huntress. So Rebirth kind of put it back to the core of what the team was. And then, like you had mentioned, it's mainly girls on the team, and it was that way solely for a very long time. But male characters like Nightwing or Savant or Wildcat, etc., would help out on certain missions. And then when Hawk and Dove officially joined the team, Hawk became the first male member of Birds of Prey.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. So, and then the movie came out, and where's Harley Quinn? Notice I didn't mention her either.
Man, finally, men getting representation in comics. I think that's important.
Men could be birds too.
I love that. I can just picture the team with Hawk as it being like 5 ladies and Hawk, and it's like the inverse of what normally happens: 5 men and 1 female member of a team.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah, it's
going like, look at this feminist agenda being pushed. It's like, ahem. Do you have any other team?
It would be great, by the way, if in that same like reverse gender kind of like to show a lesson, Hawk is on the team, but they like make him dress scantily clad for no reason.
They should.
You know what I mean? Like
they should.
Everyone else has practical armor, and he just has an open
like,
shirt where you see his abs.
Yeah, it's like you got to wear a jockstrap on this team. They like gonna like to look at you some, and that's fine. You can also fight crime if you like.
Very effective crime fighting armor.
But yeah, so well.
I was just gonna say that's kind of the basic rundown of Birds of Prey. It's relatively new in terms of just how long it's been around, but it's really sticky. So people like the title. It looks like it's here to stay in whatever incarnation it comes back in.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to point out too, because it's come, it's gone, it's come, it's gone, and every time people are like, "We like this. Can it please stay?" Like, stop. Who's asking you to stop writing this?
Well, I think one of the reasons for that is because it's actually a really strong concept, and I think that's what like preserves it over this long period of time. And actually, I don't want to get off too much on a tangent here, but like I think some of the danger of the movie being different isn't so much that it's either changes or whatever, but if the thing about this team is the strong concept, and they go away from that concept, I think there is a danger of it preserving itself or something like that. But yeah, so to sort of segue into just talking about like the kind of concept of this team and its origin, it all really begins with Oracle, and you kind of need to know that, right? So not just that it starts with Barbara Gordon, but the concept of Oracle itself. So, as you know, I mean, anybody listening to this show at this point is aware of the sort of checkered and tragic and wonderful history of Barbara Gordon. So, in this case, if you just to catch up real quick, there's a period of time where after the Killing Joke, Barbara is shot in the spine and she's paralyzed. So she can't be Batgirl anymore, at least not for a while. But come on, she's the daughter of like
Jim Gordon.
what do you call it? Jim Gordon, the top cop in DC, and then she was trained under Batman as like one of his main proteges. It's not like she's just gonna go be a social worker. You know what I'm saying? She's a super
She
genius.
found a way. I mean, she found a way to do still what she wanted to do.
Because she's a librarian super genius. So like she's
Accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, so she applies those, and I'm a computer hacker of the highest order, so she applies those skills to becoming basically the major information broker of the DC sort of world, right? If you're fighting crime in DC and Gotham and Metropolis and Star City, whatever, and you need to know somebody's rap sheet, you're probably at this period of time going to have Barbara in your ear being like, oh, he's allergic to celery, get him, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like giving you info. So because the idea is she's a very proactive character, and so, you know, but because she's not just going to be a sort of like passive information broker either, like their version of like DC villain Wikipedia or something like that. Mm-hmm. So as she becomes amassing more data and information, rather than just, okay, what heroes are available that I could sort of tell about this because I have a lead on this like crime that's taking place in the Gotham docks or whatever. They're going to steal all the cheesecake or whatever it is. She's like, they basically sort of, she organically creates her own strike team. It's not particularly a formal process though. She's just friends with Black Canary. And the sort of, this grows out of that. You know, the idea is like Black Canary as a person that she trusts to like, you know, basically send on these missions or whatever. And as it continues, they kind of just organically pick up more and more characters. So Kayla mentions Huntress is like the first one that's brought in, and that's under Gail Simone. And I don't want to take anything away from Chuck Dixon. I think he really fleshed out what this concept was going to be. But
yeah, I mean,
it's
I
really
really appreciate that he was like friendship.
yeah, exactly. But I think Gail Simone, I mean, it's no coincidence that she's a woman in this, that she really took this concept seriously and, you know, and kind of made it like, now what if they were really crime fighters and not just like ladies who like to fight crime or whatever, you know? Yeah, so they add more characters that glom on. But what I really like about this concept is that it's way more like than a team. It's like people that are just on call. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And they just happen to be women for the most part early on. Yeah. Okay. So, but what you have here, what I think is kind of cool, is like the structure of like a Charlie's Angels kind of situation, or if that, I mean, and by the way, I mean, that's another cool thing. I think what you do see fleshed out throughout the Gail Simone period, but actually Chuck Dixon talks about it a lot. And I think Kayla mentioned it just recently, and so her spiel is that like a lot of this is about the contrast of the characters on the team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you do have Barbara, who is this sort of like, obviously she's bound by her physical disability, but also just her personality is hyper analytical and often cold and calculating, like the bat or whatever. Whereas, you know, whereas Black Canary is like, she ironically kicks the shit out of people, like very hard fisted, but at the same time she's very soft.
Mm-hmm. We lost.
Did we
Kayla.
lose somebody?
Kayla. It's reconnecting to her. Let's see if it gets back to her. I know you can hear us, Kayla, but we can't hear you. I'm just gonna call her back, or call both of you back.
Mm-hmm.
You got me?
Okay.
Indeed.
It's been kind of good lately, but it's just that one time. I don't know why it does this.
You got me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I didn't know if you could hear me or not.
Okay, ready, go.
Well, hold on. No, what? I don't know where we're at. I don't know where I lost you.
Someone beeped.
I mean, I don't know. I can't rewind to hear your voice.
That's it. That's a good point. I think since it's on mine anyway, and I'm going to give it to you. I don't think you would have interrupted me anyway, so I think I can just pick up where I was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, ready when you are.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So what you have is this character, who is sort of bound by a wheelchair and like hyper cold and calculating, and you have Black Canary, who's ironically the one that like will crack your jaw with her knuckles. But she's like the softer one.
One day we will
exactly, the more optimistic one, the one less likely to do. Oh, there's also, I think this is really interesting. Early on in the series, a big theme about this is, and this is how much of a protege Batgirl, Oracle in this case really is how illegal what she's doing is. Oh, and because ultimately she's this hacker that's really defying the notion of privacy against these people. It's just we know they're villains, so it sort of seems okay.
So it's fine.
Yeah. But it yeah. But they all have a kind of interesting, like, and especially when Huntress comes on the scene, they all have a very different mentality towards what's too far and what's not enough. Mm-hmm. Because, whereas like Huntress and Black Canary would never really go so far as to like, invade, like steal, what do you call it? Like make public somebody's, I don't know, like banking account information or something, something like that or whatever. It'd never occur to them. That's kind of Barbara's thing. At the same time, like Huntress is also this character who is willing to like put a crossbow in your eyeball. And so like she goes too far in that direction.
Yep. It's like you just shot a crossbow through his skull. It's like, yeah, well, you just released his private photos. It's like,
yeah.
Are they the same level? Yeah.
But then, not to just make Black Canary the best one here. I think what I really like also is that they do put in question her ability to really like be intimidating. Not because she's a woman, but because she's a softie. And there's some great moments like with Lady Shiva. And actually we get to a lot of both of their history in this series, but like where Lady Shiva is like, we have got to teach your eyes to lie. Oh, sorry. That's not with Lady Shiva. That's with Cassandra Cain.
I was about to say, I was like, wait.
No. It just comes up later on with the Lady Shiva adventures or whatever. But like, but yeah, which I just love the idea. It's like, look, when you look at villains who are murderers, they can tell you're not a killer. So we got to make them think you're willing to do some bad shit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So these themes I think are actually really interesting as they get developed, and especially through the notion that these are women fighters in an unfortunately like, what's the word, like, I don't want to say man's world because that sounds so goofy.
Well, primarily like a male team dominated.
Yeah.
Like industry.
Yeah. And the other thing, and you sort of touched on this, Caleb, but just to sort of underscore the point a little bit, there's something interesting about the fact that like there's men in this team a lot. Mm-hmm. Like not in the original founding, but they're there along the way. There's like at least half a dozen strong examples.
I think Nightwing, Wildcat, Savant, if you technically want to count him.
Yeah. And then Creote and Blue Beetle and we mentioned Hawk. So yeah. But the funny thing is like this is a woman's team. I was like, well, but it just has the reverse ratio of like a lot of superhero teams.
Well, and so that's the thing that I want to make clear too, because with every new comic book movie, of course, there's more controversy, but with every new female-led comic book movie, there's more sad little men that come out of the woodworks. I mean, if you've never read this comic, it's not, I don't know how to put this without just plainly saying, it's not throwing feminism in your face. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's not one of those things where it's like men are awful, men suck. I mean, one, they're on the team sometimes, and two, that's just not what the team's about. Just because it's a bunch of women on the team doesn't mean they're all men hating. I've seen it a lot, and I think that people have this misconception, and I think it's kind of odd that just because the ratio in gender is different on a team, they automatically assume. It's like, well, do you think the Justice League hates women? Like,
Yeah.
Just because it's a bunch of men?
Yeah.
It's like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't understand. So it's just one of those things where it's like, if you give it a chance and you actually read it, it's not about what you think it is. Like,
yeah, and clearly there's a certain editorial intentionality here. Like, very clearly when it was proposed, it's like, it's going to be a mostly a female-dominated book. Okay, but and I think that's not a bad thing, and you can't really get past it anyway. But the thing is, in the writing, it doesn't read that way, which I think is to its credit. Like, it doesn't read like, we're women and we're going to do women things. Like, this story begins from two friends who fight crime and everything like that, and then they take on members as it makes sense in the story. Yeah, exactly. So it's not like they're like, we're only going to accept women because only women know how to, fight with that level of panache or something. It's just completely ridiculous. They sort of happen upon Huntress as this, and the funny thing is that, like, I think originally Black Canary's like, no, she's great, I trust her.
Obviously.
And Barbara's like, well, she had sex with Dick, so fuck her.
Yeah. Well, and but that's the great thing about this team, is because they are friends. Like, a lot of times in the Justice League, when you read the comics or any of the other teams, it's like, there might be moments where it's like, I've known you for 7,000 years. But in this, I've noticed with the Birds of Prey comics, whenever you read it, you can tell they wrote it with the intention of they're friends first. And then they're also a crime-fighting team. So it's kind of funny that they do have interactions that are like that. Where you have like the friend-roommate bickering, but then you also have them kicking people's asses. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. So when Gail Simone brought on Huntress and then Lady Blackhawk, then you kind of have a core of the team. And then, as was mentioned earlier, the other ones just kind of it's a revolving door. They just kind of show up as needed, which I think is actually really cool for the broader world-building continuity here as well, because it sort of explains how they can be on this team and other teams. Because when you're on the Justice League, it's like when you're a jet for life, or you know what I mean? Like, you're just on that team. That's where you're going to meetings, you're deciding, you're voting on chairman or chairwoman, all that kind of stuff. Whereas this, it's sort of like, you're just doing your thing on patrol if you're a superhero, and then you get Oracle in your ear, and she's like, hey, there's some people breaking, into Gotham's First National Bank. You gotta, are you near, or, whatever it is. So it's like, it kind of just makes more sense. They're like ass-kicking ambulances or something like that.
Well, and it's also, to that point, it's great because you get to see other characters that don't have their own comic.
Absolutely.
So, like, you get Katana and Hawk and Dove and Hawk Girl and, Big Barda, the ones that don't have their comics. So it's always nice to see them in comics and how they interact with different characters. I'm always down.
Absolutely. And I want to open this just up to a question real quick. I'm curious how far away you can stray from this concept and still have that magic a little bit, because I think that in some not just the movie where it's sort of really far out there, it's a very different concept. In this, even in like the sort of developed DC continuity, it's like once they lost the idea of Oracle being this like grounded character who's like sending out this strike team, I actually think it's sort of like, okay, so it's just any women in DC in a team. I think in some sense those later permutations, I'm not just saying it's like, oh, it's different, so I don't like it. It's like it loses the core of the story concept and just moves on to the more superficial, like, they're just a bunch of women.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I mean, it could have that effect. Like, what's that team that's on Marvel? Is it like Alpha Force or what's it?
Alpha Flight. It's the Canadian super team.
No. No, the one that's all women. What's the...
A-Force.
Oh, A-Force. I thought that in my head, and I was like, well, that's named stupid. It can't be that. Never mind. I guess it is that one. I mean, it can turn into that, essentially. And I'm not saying A-Force isn't good, but it's just a very clear, like, oh, there's... No. Oh, whatever.
I see what you say that I'm saying now. I do get it, which is that like it's just that from a story direction, that's probably not how things unfold generally. I mean, weirdly enough, like I could see there being a sort of like women's coalition of superhero fighters or something like that. You know what I mean? Like an organization like that in the world. But when they join a bunch of characters around certain kind of like social identities, it feels just a little bit more like editorially mandated.
Right.
Which
right.
on itself isn't bad. The problem is like because that happens rather than it being like a good story idea unto itself, I think that they have a harder time creating that strong like narrative scaffolding in a way where sorry, go ahead.
That sounded like you were saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
and
that's completely true. I mean,
Well, I mean,
just
I think
because it's somebody else
you're
writing
super,
it. So I mean, it's
you're
not
super correct
the end of
in
the world
terms
if you
of,
don't
like,
like it. You
if-
just
if
don't
it
like
does
it.
move
So
away
then
too far
read
from the
something else or
original
read the back issues
concept,
that you like so
character,
much.
blah,
You know?
blah,
Yeah.
and I think even diehard
and
fans of the
that being
series
said,
or
also I will say
characters,
like it's very
have
dependent
a right
on
to
like,
be like, this isn't what I liked
the
it for,
new
and I
creative
can move
team,
on. I
and
feel
so
like
even
there
if it
is,
moves
like,
in
it's kind of like
a
bigger
different
issue,
direction
like,
and
using
loses
Galaxy
that sort of
Brain
core
here instead of
concept, if
Grounded
they develop another
Birds
good
of
one,
Prey
then
brain.
I'm on board. There's
But I
a
feel
moment
like
in the
it's
history
it's
of
a
this where
problem
Big
in
Barda,
comic
Judo
books
Master, and
it
Misfit
with
all
comic
come
book
onto the
fans
team, and honestly,
that
you could sell
they're
me
like,
on
I
a
have
book
to be
just with
loyal to
those
this
three
character
characters.
Oh my
no
God,
matter
that
what
sounds amazing,
happens,
to be
and blah
honest.
blah
Yeah,
blah.
no, it's really. I mean, that's
And
actually
I
a pretty
just feel
cool
like that's
part
unfair
too.
because that character
They're
Get DC on the phone.
They're
the concept
yeah, well,
goes
they're
too
very
far away from
contrasted
what
in
you
the series,
truly
right? Because
enjoyed
Big
and loved
Barda
about
is
it, then
this
of
like,
course you should
you know,
leave and
tank
wait,
who
keep an
I
eye
think
on
Gail
the
Simone's
series
good
to see
quote
if it
about
ever
her was
goes
like,
back
anytime
closer to what
she's
you
in a
love,
series,
but
there's
there's
a
nothing
bull in
wrong
a
with
china
being like, I
shop
don't
feel
enjoy
that
this
creates awesome
anymore.
tension.
Oh yeah,
Completely agree. Because you got to remember, Barda is a warrior from Apocalypse
and is like
Like,
17
there's-
feet tall.
Yeah.
exactly, and is basically as strong as Superman. So what are you going to do?
Exactly.
And then Judo Master is a pacifist. She's
Yeah.
like one of the greatest fighters. She's in the top 7, I think, or at least was a while. That moves back and forth.
It's definitely
so
changed.
putting those two characters together. I mean, just
Oh, and then putting
on its face-
Misfit in there. I mean, hilarity ensues.
Yes, indeed. But so we've kind of nailed down the principal concept and origin of this team and stuff like that. And
So before we move
Go
away
ahead,
from
Sam.
it, what would you consider to be like what is like the main thing that is good about Birds of Prey? Like they can't change this because then it would completely change the whole feel of the comic. Is it okay?
yeah, that's really big for me.
Is
I
it
have to
just
admit.
is it just Oracle or is it Batgirl? To like, could she be Batgirl or okay?
I prefer. Well, I mean, I think I am not completely shut off to the idea, but I'd really have to see it in practice.
Well, they did have it.
I think.
It was,
No. I know. I haven't read it though. But
oh, okay.
yeah. So I don't want to judge
It's
that. I know.
it is definitely different. I mean, because she's out in the field with them. But I think for me, not having those three, or at least Black Canary and Barbara, then it just feels a little weird to me, personally.
And it's also just that it's like if like like take James Bond and you have like you have Q and you have M and they have a role. He's like he's the field agent and Q is the sort of tech person and M is the sort of like person assigning the missions and everything like that. And if all of a sudden you just make Q and M also field
feel
agents,
like they can't
I'm not
get
saying that can't happen. And there have actually been moments where they've been more in the field, but like it does lose some of the basic dynamic there. And but I mean, so I think one of the concepts too that you like, I like the idea that this is a team that's sort of operating where other people aren't paying attention, because that's another kind of underlying idea here is that like Oracle is a information broker and she like, collects data, she analyzes it, and she sees where the Justice League's not paying attention. And so she's like, "Oh, Black Canary, you got to stop this drug deal. That's it's like Batman's off in some other dimension with Superman, so they're not going to see it. So go there." You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and just to also say their base, where they operate, or the most striking one, or the conventionally like well known one, the one that was also in the TV show, which actually it was not as bad as most people say. I enjoyed it at the time.
Yeah,
was the clock tower? It's so cool. Like
yes,
their
absolutely.
base is a clock tower. Like I just think that's awesome. Like it's not a cave and it's not an ice sculpture. It's a clock tower in the middle of the city.
Yeah, that clock tower actually made it into the Arkham games too.
Yes. Yep.
Oracle clock tower, really cool. And then the other thing about this too, and I don't think this, it's like death by 1,000 paper cuts. I don't think that you can't do this because you had like Big Barda and Vixen and Hawkgirl have been in the series, and that's really cool. But I have to admit, like the early stuff that I've read that I really enjoyed, there was something about them being street level characters that also had a certain charm to it.
Damn it again!
It's like I think one of Black Canary's first missions under Gail Simone. She gets taken captive and she's like tied up, and it's very Gerald's game. And I mean her assailants are there, but like and that's a cool place to get to have superhero comics go. Where it's just these like terrorists, and the guy Savant that does this is like a good fighter, so it's not like a crazy thing. But I'm just saying, like at some level, I think you change one of the other changes that took place that like moved it away from the central concept was like upping the superpower factor.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Jeez, we gave a lot to them. So okay, so who would you? So if you could make a Birds of Prey team,
Oh no.
what would it consist of? Okay, not the original. Okay, you can keep one original member.
Oh, that's impossible.
Nope.
Yeah, I can't do that.
It's not impossible. Just do it.
Okay. I'll say this. Like, I would just keep Oracle and then revolve the rest of the cast. But I mean, for me, the core of this team is Oracle, Huntress, and Black Canary, and then just get a revolving cast after that. By the way, it's not like there haven't been periods that were good that didn't have some of these. Like I think issue 100 or something like that. It's in that tier. Gail Simone has Black Canary leave.
Yeah.
To join the Justice League. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, but that happens in every team, right? I mean, Captain America leaves the Avengers. That happens, right?
Okay, so what's your team? What
they
would
deserve
your
it.
team be if you could write a book or have a book made?
Oh my god! So I would probably have Canary and Oracle, and then I'd fill it out with like again some women who have also appeared. Like, no, I'm not done. But I was gonna say women that are more like kind of part of the underground. I really liked the anti-hero, anti-villain vibe that gets mixed up in that team. Another thing we didn't say, but I'm glad we sort of got here now. Lady Shiva and Cheshire also play a part on this team.
Same.
And the moral ambiguity of the narrative here actually allows for some villains or quasi-villains, like I said, the anti-villain, that kind of stuff, to appear on the team. So I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, Huntress
absolutely.
Is, right there.
I think one character that wasn't on this, at least didn't appear very often, who I think would be great, is Onyx. Onyx is a female character that used to work for... she used to be part of the League of Assassins, and then she basically rebelled and became a crime fighter in Gotham for a while. I think she would have been perfect for this team. So yeah, that'd just be like one of mine.
Okay, so what's your team? You just named 17 people.
Some women.
Well, no, you said I said some characters. That's what I want to see with this team. I want to see. I want to see
name three.
No, I want to see the.
Name three.
I told you. Well, that's just the core team. That's just Huntress, Black Canary, Oracle. That's easy.
Okay, I was just trying to have a fun question about...
It is a fun question. I'm just saying... It is a fun question. I'm just saying the way that it would work, I think, on most like writers, is you have a core team and then you have like a revolving other group.
Well, I mean,
so you
Huntress
would just
is
write...
right there.
Ooh!
They've all been on the team together.
That's right.
No, I know.
You're like
I'm saying it's a
changing
good
the goalpost
team.
a lot. Like,
Yeah, I'm saying it's a good team. All right, God.
Well, what about
moving
you?
on. No,
what about you?
moving
No,
on.
no, not moving on. You got to answer this question now.
God. Probably Black Canary, Power Girl, and Big Barda. Yep. That's what I would do.
Also, I think we can all admit that Noah is Huntress, I am Oracle, and Kayla is Black Canary. Bam. I got it. I did it.
Why am
We're
I?
not going to do what you want, Noah, because it's
you're-
away from
'cause
what we
you're
believe
mean.
is the true concept
Yeah.
of Birds of Prey.
Oh my God.
You're mean. Oh, and in your own beautiful way, but you definitely would. If somebody's like, who would shoot a person in the eye with a crossbow? Of the three of you, we would all point at you, and you would be holding a crossbow.
Oracle,
It depends
Huntress,
on what they
and Batwoman.
did.
Exactly. That's exactly the correct Huntress-like answer.
So,
Anyway.
God, moving on.
Yeah.
Talk about Huntress, Kayla. God. I asked one simple question.
It's a great question. Oh yeah, Black Canary. Haha.
Oh, okay. Well, go on.
Yeah, don't sound too goddamn disappointed. Anyway, okay. The Black Canary. Okay, so here's the deal. I don't know why they do this with comic books where they're like,
Alright.
the women need to have confusing histories. That's
you
important
are
to
always
us.
the darker one.
I think there is a kind of quasi-sexist element where the idea is like, women are really mysterious. It's like, well, it sounds like you're making them that way when you write them.
It's like they really don't have to be. I'm just-
Well, and if you look, okay, so if you look into Black Canary's origin, it is a goddamn mess. Now, some of it isn't so much like weird writing decisions that
what
just
they did.
kill you. A lot of it is like editorial issues, like things like post-crisis or what have you.
Wait,
So when you look this up, you're going to see like the Golden Age Black Canary was a different character.
I thought we were gonna start with
It was this
Black
character
Canary
named
on the Deep
Dinah
Dive
Drake.
characters.
Right, and what ends up happening with her is that like she goes along for a while. She's her origin is 1947, and then at some point when she's in the League, and she's like getting along with Green Arrow, they get put as a pair or something like that. The idea is like, why is she so much older than him? So they're
She's like 7.
Exactly. So they try to explain this by saying that, well, she looks younger somehow. So that at one point, her daughter had like these powers, and they had to put her in suspended animation because she would scream and kill everybody. But she was Dinah Drake was gonna die of cancer that she got from fighting this character Aquarius or whatever. And so they inject her memories into the body of the daughter in suspended animation, so she's her own goddamn daughter or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the sort of original origin and then retooling. Thank God Post-Crisis comes along. And in, yeah.
That had
'cause
a
in
lot. That was a lot. That was a lot.
I mean, we a lot of people don't like the reboots. We've talked about this a lot, but I have to say, Post-Crisis is like one of the most effective ones because it wasn't just like how mixed up the worlds were. A lot of the characters' histories had been so weird and muddled because originally they didn't think about the fact, like in the 40s when they were writing these characters, it was just like week to week. They didn't think that they were gonna need to manage like decades long histories or whatever. So shit got confused, and they were like, okay, we can fix it. Let's just like do a big world change or whatever.
It's like, wait.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, why
Exactly.
is she so old? Wait, we can't make her be old. Make her be her daughter. Wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah, that's how unreal. That's how, like, in the 60s, they're like, oh, old woman being a superhero, that's really unrealistic. I can't buy that. Wait, she's in the body of a young woman. We'll do a mind swap. That happens every day.
Give her cancer,
Yeah.
too. That way she
Exactly.
has to die.
Exactly.
God.
And actually, I scaled down that history. It is
Oh,
way
yeah.
more convoluted.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, okay, so what our story really begins with who our character is now post-crisis, and there's been some changes, especially with Rebirth and New 52 and everything like that. But the main thing is her name is Dinah Laurel Lance, or you just hear her called Dinah or Dinah Lance. And she is the daughter of the original Black
Yeah.
Canary, Dinah Drake. So we still have the mother-daughter relationship, but rather than saying they were the
is
same
like people
person
don't
or some
age in
weird
comic
mind swap
book
or
land.
whatever, this is just her
Some
daughter. She was a
people,
Golden
they
Age hero.
stop aging
Very
at,
much like
like,
the Silk
45,
Spectre
otherwise
relationship in
Bruce would
Watchmen.
be a
Yeah.
skeleton.
Except in this case, she doesn't want her daughter to fight crime. And her dad is a private investigator, so she's sort of like meant to be a superhero, and she really wants to be one.
It's like, you're telling me not to do this thing, but the family business is literally doing this thing.
Exactly. So she begins training in secret, specifically under the JSA character Wildcat. It's Ted Grant. Yeah, he's awesome. He's an awesome character. If you don't know him, he's a feline-based boxing character. Who knows why? But he's really cool. Yeah, exactly. Cat boxing. The old when cats hit each other with gloves on. But yeah, it used to be a sport. It was the biggest sport in the country, actually, for a while, cat boxing. But anyway, so she trains under Ted, and she also happens to have a metagene, which gives her the Canary cry. Now, instead of not being able to control it or killing a bunch of people like Black Bolt style, she's just sort of got a natural ability to harness it and use it like with a pretty competent level of efficiency, proficiency.
She could scale it back, bring it out, do it small,
absolutely,
do it big. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And I might as well tell you basically how her powers work, what her deal is. When you see her in the comics, it's easy to underestimate, like, oh, she's just a fighter or whatever. Dinah's one of the best fighters in the DC universe. She's easily
good fighters.
Absolutely. And she's easily in the top 7. And another thing I love about her is very similar to Batman. She just has this acumen for the people she's trained under. Mm-hmm. So unlike some characters that just sort of like it's inexplicably like Lady Shiva is just the greatest fighter ever. She had some sensei or whatever. And Black Canary's trained under Batman and she's trained these people too, but like try the trading skills. She's trained under the same sensei that Lady Shiva had, so they actually have that relationship. Weirdly enough, they're like sisters in this dark way. She's trained under Ted Grant, under Judo Master, under Cassandra Cain. So she's just up there with basically every again top 7. She's beaten Batman, or at least like a pretty close fight. And I think what I love about this character, yeah, absolutely. And I think what I love about this character too is that she also has the Canary scream, which she kind of doesn't like to use for some obvious reasons, because if she's a sort of street level character, it doesn't make sense to like be beating the shit out of robbers and then melt one of their brains with her Canary cry. So she uses that only when she fights usually other superhumans or something like that.
It's
and
like
it's
her
not
ace
to be
in the hole. That's exactly. She uses it when she has to use it.
And it's not to be underestimated. It's a very powerful weapon in the context of superhero fights and stuff like that. She can hurt Kryptonians with it. She can like shatter steel, destroy concrete. It's very up there. Because the thing too is like, even if you're a Kryptonian, you still have eardrums. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah.
I was like, wait. Oh yeah, they do.
yeah. They've got body parts. Everybody knows it. Anyway. Yeah, so what another cool thing about her, because she has that weird counter history with like she was her mom's memory or whatever, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. She was part of the Justice Society. She was on Earth 1 originally, but then she's also Earth 2. That's Earth 2. She was also in Earth 1 after Post Crisis as Dinah Lance. So she was in both the Justice Society and the Justice League, and there's very few characters who have been in both.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. And here's the other thing, and I do not. This is really sort of, it's like adorable, but also kind of eye-rolling. Is that after she was trained, essentially got to the point where she could launch her Black Canary identity, she was like, okay, well, I also have to have a regular job. I'll open up a florist shop.
Yeah.
So for some reason,
cute.
It is very cute, and it's got the best name ever, Sherwood Florist. Yeah. Bam. That is a really good name, actually. But it's also like, it is really annoying that they always had to give the women kind of like, it's got to be girly or whatever. Like, she's a manager of a lipstick factory. Excellent. Okay.
Yeah, but
it's like
when they write it though, it's not super pandery. Like, she loves doing it. Like, it just happens to be one of her hobbies that she's like, yeah, I can make bomb ass floral arrangements.
I think you're absolutely right in that they've written that depth into it, and that's really cool. I don't want to take anything away from it, but just the original concept, it's like it's kind of
Don't take away from her flowery passions.
So that's the basic character of Black Canary. She's like, and I guess I should add this just because it's been such a crucial part. While she was in Justice League, she met one deeply annoying but strangely compelling Oliver Queen, aka the Green Arrow, and they've had a pretty pronounced and long romantic relationship.
And
They've
very
been married at certain points.
confusing relationship.
Absolutely. They've been married, which I think I actually really love them together. I think they're a great team.
I mean, they're like a B-list Lois and Clark. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Great.
And as is the way that they often do this, it's like they generate stories by certain conflicts. So they've definitely been off and on. And there have been some serious stuff between the two where it's like a lot of the story would be driven by the fact that Oliver is a flake. Yeah. And he has abandoned her several times. Like he's abandoned all of his, absolutely abandoned all of his kids at some level.
He's a dick.
And it's like he is. I mean, it's just like a hero's journey to it a lot of times where he's like has huge responsibility. So it's but ultimately, yeah, it's really hard to get past the fact that a lot of that shit is his fault. But yeah. So the relationship is great, and I think they're always going to be kind of an item. They're always going to be connected in that way. And then, if you're a recent reader of the Black Canary, I think in the New 52 she was one of the characters that I think they departed too far, and they really
me too.
did it. It's like a Scarlet Witch thing where they're like trying to like change some stuff, and they've just ended up making it more convoluted. So and I don't think it's going to stick around. We don't really know because Black Canary hasn't been in Rebirth as much as she could have, so it's hard to tell what they've undone. Yeah, exactly. So it's hard to tell what they undid from New 52, but just briefly, I'll tell you. They tried to give her a kind of super spy background, and also change her powers so that they were like alien implants rather than the metagene. It's very stupid in the sense of adding it. It's like if that was the original to the character, that'd be fine. If it was a kind of a Miss Marvel thing, but like it's just a metagene. Her having a metagene was fine. It didn't require further explanation. It's all through the DC universe. It's like they're mutants basically. And yeah, I mean, and I don't love the idea that her being a super spy. That's for other characters.
Also, yeah, her power is to.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Her power is to scream. Like that's not very stealthy.
Yeah, and yeah, you're exactly right. And the other thing about it is that like as her being this like martial artist who learned on the streets from great characters, all across DC's universe. That's a really sufficient and pretty tight conceptual character idea. It doesn't require also let's make her a spy. Also, she's a vampire hunter. Also, she's a hang glider. Like you're adding too much and it's taking away from the character. So anyway, that's basically Black Canary. Dinah is one of my favorite female characters, honestly, and I think I'd put her in my top 10.
Oh, she's in my top characters. 10 of favorite characters of all time. I love her so much. Yeah,
really fantastic. She could probably use some more exposure. I think I'd really like to see.
Oh, you mean like an ongoing series? Because she doesn't
easily
have one.
I think she could easily. I mean, there's a lot of characters who aren't going to get one. A lot of, you know what I mean? Like there's some great characters all around, but like I think at least every once in a while, every 2-3 years, I'd like to see a 6 issue. You know what I mean? Because I think she could sustain that, and she's really great. So anyway.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Or
just go back to Green Arrow and Black Canary. They had a comic for a while. Like, I mean,
yeah, I agree. Agreed.
Yes. Oh, Huntress. Mm.
Yeah, exactly. One of the times Oliver's not an asshole. Okay. So, Huntress. I'm actually glad I got this character. I'm glad I got this character because there was a couple of years ago I was actually obsessed with Huntress.
Can I just say before you get into Huntress, we didn't talk I forgot to mention this for some reason. Go back and listen to our Women of the Bat episode also. Because it'll give you some idea about Oracle if you want to know more about her.
Yeah, and you should because she's the best.
If I already said that, sorry about that. Yeah.
Yeah, twice.
You're all good. It's all good. So yeah, Huntress. God. Name Helena Bertinelli. Sometimes Helena Wayne. I'm not going to go into that. I am going to talk about the version of Huntress, Helena Bertinelli, who was on the original Birds of Prey team. So that's how I narrowed down my research. It was ridiculous. Like you had said, they love coming up with the most convoluted backstories for women, and making it as confusing as possible.
Yeah.
So Helena Wayne who? Anyway. Huntress is a vigilante, borders on, honestly, anti-hero. She's the Jason Todd of the team. She's prone to use excessive force, which puts her at odds with Batman all of the time because she operates more often than not in Gotham City. A little bit of her backstory. Oh, God. She's a former mafia princess, so her parents were mobsters. She was kidnapped by a mobster at the age of 6 and raped because that's how women backstories go. And then they sent her to boarding school where she can learn to fight, and she had a bodyguard while she was there, so she learned to become a kick-ass martial artist. She comes back at 19, and her parents are killed by a mob hit right in front of her. So, because she trained as an assassin, she declares war on the mob in the name of justice. And again, she has no mercy. Her, words fail me. Weapon of choice is the classic crossbow. So, I mean, she will kill you.
That sends a message, by the way.
It's not a gun, it's a crossbow.
You know what I mean? Like, if the superhero has, it has a pointy thing. Yeah, it's like Daryl Dixon is the other, I think, character we know with the crossbow.
Well, it's like she doesn't have gadgets on it. So it's like she's obviously trying
to me, it's
to
as
hurt you
personal as
really
like
bad.
a stabbing. Guns can seem fast but impersonal, and Helena is like a very personal vendetta that she wants to like you had said, hurt. To me, it's akin for like I said, stabbing versus shooting someone in the face. Yup.
Yeah, she wants you to feel it. Like
she could have gone with the old Green Arrow thing, which is like have little boxing gloves on her crossbow bolts. But thank God, good taste prevailed.
One of my favorite things, her costume is freaking awesome because I love the color purple, and it has like the big white cross on it. Sometimes with the pointy mask, sometimes not. Classic look has the pointy mask. And because she operates in Gotham, she has she was Batgirl at one time for a short stint. She has it's in an alternate universe. And she has an interesting and kind of unique relationship with all of the Bat family. Like I said, Batman more often than not is like, leave, because she kills people. And like you had mentioned, Jared, a little bit of a romantic-ish relationship or stint with Dick Grayson. And out of all the Robins, I think
he really gets around, that guy.
He's the playboy.
Who's come in contact with Batman? I'm gonna date them.
Out of all the Bat family, I think Tim Drake, for some reason, has the most balanced. Like, he doesn't outright hate her relationship with Helena Bertinelli. In terms of her place in the Birds of Prey, like I was mentioning a little bit in the publication history, she's introduced when Gail Simone takes over about halfway through the original run. So she joins Oracle and Black Canary. She bonds with Black Canary when they oppose a man called Brawn, who had seduced and left both of them. So, I mean, I would have preferred not that way of bonding. Seems pretty sexist to me. Come on, Gail. But they were spurned by the same man, so her and Black Canary are friends now. And then she continues to work for the group. Her relationship with Oracle is strained, again, because Oracle was trained heavily by the Batman, and Oracle just finds her reckless and prone to violent outbursts and uncontrollable, and Barbara has a very controlling nature, so she doesn't really like Huntress's recklessness, so that part of the relationship within Birds of Prey is strained. She becomes full-time Birds of Prey in issue number 68. And it was through bonding with Barbara, because Barbara was about to be killed. Two agents are like a couple of the government, basically, because you had said that Oracle gets into some not legal stuff. The government was like, oh, there's a breach in security. Let's not give Oracle due process. Let's take her in and torture her and get all the information we need. Yeah. So Oracle sends out a distress call meant for Black Canary, but Black Canary is away or busy. So Huntress is the one that answers the call, saves Oracle's life, and then they kind of become a little closer since then. And then Oracle's the one, I'm glad that you mentioned up the day job of Black Canary as a florist, because Oracle's the one that sets them up with day jobs. And she makes Huntress an elementary school teacher.
I did not know that. Holy shit.
I didn't either. That's great.
Wow.
I guess this was a lifelong dream of
Terrifying.
hers, because it was a childhood dream of her to become a teacher. And it gives her a great sense of fulfillment, inspires her, and I guess it kind of just coaxes her more protective nature out. So it softens her up a little bit. I know on the surface, I was like, she became an elementary school teacher, this violent woman, but it works.
I love the idea of like Helena in like the teacher's lounge being just in her head like, oh my god, I would much prefer to be punched in the face by Killer Croc right now. I would so much like that rather than have to face these demons.
With the administration or the principal of the school. And then I mean, she's kind of still has. She's kind of always been the black sheep of the team, though, even though she's now full-time. Straightforwardness still puts her at odds with Barbara and even Dinah. But eventually, you know, she kind of proves herself to be selfless. She becomes a valued and integral member of the team, especially when, like you had mentioned before, Black Canary leaves the Birds of Prey in issue number 99. And so Huntress becomes Oracle's like most trusted operative and field commander.
I really loved what Gail Simone said about her in this context.
Yeah.
Because, you know, she brought Huntress on to the book, and so there was some intentionality there. And she said that, like, Huntress is a loner, but often not intentionally so. And so she's sort of attracted to the idea that this is a group that's willing to accept her because, you know, her relationship to the Bat family is in itself deeply interesting. Because, like, Batman's very on and off with the his approval. Like, he does not sanction her.
Yeah.
She is not part of the Bat family. But he allows her to exist in Gotham because ultimately he accepts the fact that she's basically a good... Because the thing, you know, it's like she's not exactly the Punisher. If you follow, like, Huntress's, like, fights and stuff like that, she doesn't just murder people. She will, if it comes to that. But for the most part, you know, she's also trying to be, like, a kind of normal crime fighter. You know, and, like, put him in cuffs, give him to the cops kind of stuff.
It's like, now all they have to be like is like, well, look at your fucking son. Like, you're going to get mad at me for being
Batman's
a murderer?
not
Your son's a murderer.
Jason out of Gotham, so he's like, damn, I guess.
Or even Damien.
You were bashing Damien for being a murderer. You admitted it.
I mean, I very well know he's a murderer. I just love him so much.
But yeah, I mean, Huntress is, I mean, like you had said, very interesting, and I wanted to do her because of her extensive connection to the Bat family and Gotham itself. But yeah, I feel like she kind of completes the balance that was missing in the team when it was just Oracle and Black Canary. She kind of revolves, she makes the stories a little darker and provides a little grit that was kind of necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right, because the thing is that, like, you know, Dinah and Barbara are not the same. They definitely offset one another in certain ways, but neither of them really have an edge. Yeah. And that this is a street level comic, at least initially, at least in its core concept, the idea of having somebody that's really gritty in your character, a real like
exactly.
and because Gotham is supposed to be that.
Yeah.
Gotham is supposed to be this like very dark, dangerous place. So to have a dark, dangerous sort of heroine and the core of this, I think, is a real smart move.
Yeah, and it brings an interesting dynamic just in the fact that she was, a mob princess, but then her family's, gone. She's put into a boarding school where she trains to fight. So she doesn't necessarily have a normal childhood. So how she interacts with people is just going to be different regardless. So it's interesting to see her be put in with a team that like you have a very analytical person, somebody that's, typically optimistic, and then you have Huntress coming in. It creates the triangle of a good group. Like you need these tensions and foils for each other.
I think weirdly enough, Huntress kind of got overshadowed more recently by Cassandra Cain.
Yeah.
Because they have sort of similar backstories in a way. But I do, leaving aside Cassandra for a while, I think it's interesting too because we look at their like kind of how they came up as fighters. So Barbara's the daughter of a cop, obviously, and was trained by Batman. Black Canary went around the world. It was trained by one of the greatest boxers of all time in the DC universe, and then also went around the world under these like master senseis. But Helena was trained by a mob assassin.
So what did you expect, guys?
Yep.
So the mentality that, and it's a real cool difference because at some level it's like she's not as good a fighter as Black Canary. There's a few moments where like Black Canary gives her shit. Like at one point she's like you can't take these guys, and Huntress is like, why? It's like, because they beat me. Or whatever. But at the same time, like if in terms of like again like more melee fighting and like weapons and like just straight up almost killing somebody or killing them, like it's hard to beat Huntress.
Mm-hmm. No. How do you feel, before we move on from her, how do you feel about the redesign?
I was trying not to mention.
Like where she had the hood?
The New 52 was obsessed with spies. In that continuity, it was like Helena Wayne was there and killed, and Bertinelli took over her identity, and it was just a mess. The real Huntress was with Spiral all along. And she was introduced when Dick Grayson became a secret agent, too. So it was like, everyone is a secret agent. Isn't that so great? My God, I'm talking about that redesign. She looked beautiful. But she just... She wasn't Huntress at all.
Beautiful on the inside.
a purple-ish outfit with a white cross on it. And there is where the similarity ends. Mm-hmm. Like, she didn't have her backstory, her origin at all. It was just such a mess. She looked pretty, though. If they would just keep the backstory.
Yeah, and they were younger, too.
Look, however.
Yeah, and they were younger, too, than they were prior. Like, they looked younger, at least. Yeah. Interesting.
I will say, I haven't disliked a single Huntress costume. Like, despite like the sort of story changes and stuff like that, I think she's got an awesome comic design. I love how close it is to almost looking bat-like, but how at the same time distinct and far away it is. I think it's awesome. Great name, great concept. Black Canary, not a series of great costumes. Let's be honest, just not.
Hey, but she owns it.
No, I actually love the fishnet stockings and jacket.
Huntress
I think
does
super strong
to
look.
the Gotham City superhero
it's like absolutely. But Black Canary's had some other costumes that are just straight up like this is ugh.
Yeah, I'm just glad they never added like black feathers to her costume.
Yeah, thank God. Yeah, sorry, Ricky.
Okay, so moving on to the last and final, and not really much to say on her, member of this team. She is the one that named the team, so Lady Blackhawk, or Zinda Blake. So to understand who she is and where she came from the World War II era, which it gets a little confusing, but it's comics. Of course, time travel is involved. She was
naturally.
So the Blackhawk Squadron is where she originally comes from. I think she first appeared in like 133 or something like that. It was back in 1959. So Zinda Blake, she was determined to become the first member of the famed World War II fighter squadron, the Blackhawks. Of course, during that time, they did not want women on their team, even though she saves them multiple times. So by the last time she finally saves them, they're like, okay, you can be an honorary member of the Blackhawk Squadron. So she constantly is saving these guys and constantly being the only one that like hears their SOS or anything. And then at the end, they're finally like, okay, well, I mean, you can wear the uniform, but like you can't really be in it. So, but then 0 Hour happens, and 0 Hour messes up with the timeline, and she's flung into the future. And that's when, in 2004, Zinda begins service as a team pilot for the Birds of Prey.
Hell yeah.
And so that's pretty much her role with the Birds of Prey. She is
I just love that she's some chick from the 40s. Just in the modern day, like, I'm a pilot. Check out these games, and I got a bunch of guns, and I'm drinking a martini right now.
Yeah,
like, well, man, she is cool.
Yeah, she talks like it too, which I think is really interesting. Yeah. Because when she finds out that Creo is gay, she says, "Holy crap, this boy is fancy."
He's a little light in the lobas, if you know what I'm saying. He likes to collect twigs in the springtime, if you catch my drift.
But a really cool thing, and I don't know if you've read it, but when Big Barda was on the team, her and Blake actually developed a pretty close relationship. And seeing these two interact is amazing. Like, it could be a sitcom with just these two. I love it so much because you have this like 7-foot tall woman and then this other woman from the 40s that wears, it looks like, almost like a flight attendant's outfit, kind of, depending on what you're looking at, but it's like all black and it's very tight fitting, and she has a hat. She has 2 guns with the big like Black Hawk on her chest.
They're like, Zinda, what are you drinking a martini right now? So of course I'm drinking a martini. It's 2:00.
No, but I don't want to undersell her. She's a great part of the team. She's saved them multiple times. Without her, how would they get around to places they need to go?
She's awesome.
Like, yeah, I mean, so she plays a role, and she does fight as well. Mostly shooting guns. No, she's kind of the one that runs in at the end, like, guns blazing, and she's like, "I helped."
Yeah. She should be chain smoking the whole time. It's like, oh, I've got to take my vitamin sticks. She's smoking because she doesn't know.
Yeah. So whenever the Birds of Prey was disbanded, Oracle had returned to Gotham City after Batman's death. Zinda decided to go to this thing called the Network, which is a team that would keep order in Gotham during the time that Batman had died. So she still worked closely with Huntress and Oracle only because she was operating at Batman or in Gotham as well. So, but ever since then, she has not been seen. And I think in 2011, there was a Lady Blackhawk that was seen in a comic, but nobody knows who it is. Because there's been 2 other Lady Blackhawks. Zinda is the most well-known one because of her stint in Birds of Prey. But there was another one that showed up, but it wasn't named. So we have no idea who it is or even where Lady Blackhawk went.
I think that the next Lady Blackhawk should be a character from even further down the time stream. Which is like 10,000 like 10,000 BC. So Lady Blackhawk is her like native name, you know what I mean? And she doesn't understand electricity, but she like kills you with a spear. Instead of a plane, you get on her back.
There's a team of Lady Blackhawks that are all from different parts of history.
Hell yeah! This is what I want to see.
I mean, to be fair, this is teetering on Hawkman's story we're describing right now, but with a normal human woman.
Yeah. And she just uses her like the fact that women had been like oppressed for so long, so she's just like a hardier person with greater character than the average person. That'd be great.
I do want to say, just to kind of give her more airtime, because we'll probably never talk about her again.
True.
After she became an honorary member, she wasn't really involved with the team too much. She tried to act, but it was a failed attempt. So she was returned to serve, like assisting the
Poor
Blackhawks.
baby.
Makes sense.
I just wanted,
Yeah.
I just wanted to. She tried to be an actress, but it just didn't work out. Sorry, girl.
Yeah, when we talked on Twitter just briefly, like Noah put out a question, and it was like, who else would you think is the natural core member?
Who do you think are the core members of Birds of Prey other than the three?
Yeah, other than Oracle, Huntress, and Black Canary, and it was overwhelmingly Zenda was top of the list. So yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, I knew the answer to it, but I also wanted to see what other people thought, because I thought, it's cool to see some people be like Misfit, like that's the story that they like. But I mean,
and there are more popular characters that were on the team, and I was curious too, because I didn't know if people were just going to say Big Barda or Vixen because they're just beloved DC characters who happen to be on the team.
Well, somebody said Blue Beetle, and I was like, okay, well, you think they're a core member? They were in it for like 3 issues.
Yeah.
I think that's what Jared was talking
weird.
about. It's like, wasn't there that one time Hawk and Dove were on? I love Hawk and Dove, so I'd be like, that'd be cool to do, but it's not exactly.
Yeah. And she named the damn team too. So, in issue 88, like, how do you go that long without naming your team?
And I don't want to go so far as to be like, it's like how Alfred's in the Bat family, even though he's like not, doesn't generally fight, unless somebody invades.
She's like their Alfred.
Wayne Manor. Yeah, exactly. It's like this character that's in the background, but is like supportive and is a sort of like, you need that. So yeah,
I mean, she is a badass. She's funny. She's quirky. She talks like she's from the time period she's in. Like, I like her. Whenever I've read her, like, just that one run, and I was like, this chick's pretty cool. But then you never see her again. So such as comics.
Such as comics. We should end all episodes.
That's a new version
that way.
Well, we're not done yet. We need to recommend.
Oh, that's true. Recommendations.
Do you have a
real quick, do we just want to mention like what we're hoping to see in the movie?
Barbara Gordon.
Okay. No, Kayla. God. I mean, that would be okay. I'm just gonna say it would be really cool if, like, okay, she's not in it at all, but then at the very end, you just
I think
see,
it'd be
like,
cool, Nick Fury-esque.
Wheel. Yeah, and then it ends, and you're like, okay, cool. Because, like, I mean, personally, I've felt this way since they announced it. Like, yes, it's kind of weird that Harley Quinn's in it, but she's very popular, and they're using this could be just a vehicle to get the Birds of Prey together, but then that's it. Like, and I would be fine with that. Like, as long as she's not like a member, like, like the leader or anything like that, I'm fine with this. As long as it just like introduces these characters into the universe.
The only thing though is that I find it hard. Like, she's the selling point for most general audience members, and like the Suicide Squad was a disaster, but at least in terms of its.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. Which is, I think, the idea was that they were like, look, she is a standout performer. Everybody loves her. Everybody loves Margot Robbie. So let's put her in something else that is a better natural fit, and hopefully we'll try again. And they did that with this movie, and I'm of two minds about this, just generally because it's like on one end, I want this thing to be translated, and it doesn't look like they tried to translate it. It really, at the other end, I want a good comic book movie, and if this is that, I don't really care if it's too far away. I think DC needs a success here, and so I part of me is like, look, if they went with this because they thought this was the winner,
my resigned attitude towards this is it's not what I wanted for a Birds of Prey movie, but I hope it's at least fun.
Right, and I think that's why I'm kind of okay with what they're doing, only in that, like, if how do I put this? Like, I don't see this being just because Harley Quinn's in it, and it seems like it's a very much Harley Quinn movie with like these Birds of Prey characters in it. It's as long as it's not like this is the Birds of Prey movie, you know what I mean? And it's just like they're just brought into it. That's fine. But I feel like even if they were going to do that, they should have changed the title around It should have just been the fabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn featuring the Birds of Prey. You know what I mean? Like if it's
that makes sense.
Yeah, if they're not like essentially the central characters of it.
I have to say too, and I don't want to crap on Captain Marvel too much here, but there's a sense that I'm like, I don't know what's good to flaunt or whatever, but I think that this is I think it's good that this is a movie, a superhero movie that's dominated by women, and it looks like the reviews are really good so far. Mm-hmm. It looks like everybody's it looks like a fun romp that we haven't really seen, more in like the Marvel style, more in like the Deadpool style and stuff like that. So I also think that's a really good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
and the reason
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, the reason I mentioned this is that like I feel like with Captain Marvel that was actually a relatively regressive movie, but it happened to have a white woman at the lead of it, and so people were sort of like, "Oh, this is a big feminist move," and they said so much about it, and then I thought it was somewhat disappointing in even that sense. Whereas this, they're not really talking too much about what a move forward this is for women in comics and comics movies, and I actually think it's probably a bigger one because we actually haven't really seen this before, which is like a all women ensemble cast that's like not pulling punches, doesn't give a shit, and is really fun.
Yeah, so I mean, thing that I just hope to see is a very fun movie, something we haven't seen before. All these characters get their moment, and it's just good, and it's a vehicle for Birds of Prey to continue. That's it. That's all I want. Oh, good. All right. Comic book recommendation time. I guess I'll kick it off. So I'm going to recommend something that hasn't come out yet, but it's coming out like this coming Wednesday, I believe. So it's Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey. Now, the only reason why I'm recommending it is because Amanda Connor's writing it. The artwork's amazing. It's under DC's Black Label, so you know it's going to be pretty well done. And I think there's only 4 issues that are going to come out. But I'm interested to see how they're going to do Harley Quinn with the Birds of Prey in the comics. Yeah. Now, we still have to see the movie, but I'm interested to see how they're going to do it in the comics because comic Harley's different. Birds of Prey comic is different than the movie, so I'm really interested to see that, and I want other people to read it so that way we can all argue about it or also love it together.
Well, I'm down to argue any day.
I know.
No need to be afraid.
Oh, God. All right. Who's got their next one?
I'm just, as much as it pains me, I'm not going to recommend one with Oracle in a certain sense. So I'm going to do the Rebirth, the most recent one, because I just think it's easier to find for people. So it's Batgirl and the Birds of Prey. It came out July 2016 at the start of Rebirth. The cool thing is it's written by 2 women, Julie Benson and Shauna Benson, and then an artist is Claire Rowe. So all women on it. Super cool. It brings the cast back to the original Batgirl, Black Canary, and Huntress, with Poison Ivy and Catwoman kind of being part-time members. So it's very bat heavy, and I love it. And then it kind of the initial enemy is they battle Snake Man and Oracle, a villain using Batgirl's former code name. So in a way, Oracle is there.
You found a loophole.
I did. But yeah, it's just Batgirl and the Birds of Prey.
Yay!
And there was one.
Oh, it's my turn? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So here's a funny thing is that it was going to be really hard to recommend what I was going to recommend until recently. And the reason being is that, my recommendation is Birds of Prey, Murder and Mystery. This is Gail Simone's inaugural story.
That's my favorite one.
On the title.
My all-time favorite.
It's amazing. I love it. Ed Benes is the artist on most of it. It's beautiful stuff. I have to admit, his art is very 90s. It's still good, but it's definitely dated.
It's like
that
good
does make
90s,
it bad.
though. Good 90s.
It is. It really is. It is good stuff. Actually, you know what? I think the biggest difference is the inking and the color. Like, that sets it apart. And I don't like it as much on that basis, but everything else is still sharp and the story is great. And the reason I say this, they re-released, because of the movie coming out, obviously,
Did you get it?
Yeah, I got it.
I got
love
it too. I was so happy it came out in reprinting. I was like,
Me too.
yay!
Yes, and yeah, absolutely. Because this was out of print completely. Not just like, oh, it's hard to like order. It's you couldn't order it. You could get it used, but I mean, honestly, because of that, like it would be like $75.
Yeah, and also it wasn't all collected too. Like some of the ones that when we were researching this, I was looking at stuff to reread and stuff I didn't have, and I found it, and it was like for some reason separated, and I was like, why is it $50 for each one? I was like, you guys are fucking crazy. And then I went to the comic shop, and I was like, wait, what?
But generally speaking, like away from just I love these characters, we've been talking about it. Gail Simone is a master storyteller, and it's very clear here. I mean, she has a way of weaving together a bunch of different related thematic storylines, and that there aren't too many. I mean, there's always a little bit of dangling plot line stuff we never really fully flesh out or get back to, but she does a really good job of like creating a lot of story potential happening at the same time with interconnected characters. It's just really engaging. Her work usually is, but this is top shelf Gail Simone.
You know, one thing I will say about her and her writing, not only is she like the mother of Birds of Prey, like I know there was another creator, but Gail Simone really is the one that brought it to contemporary readers, and it's become beloved because of her. But she has an amazing way of taking like characters that have been lost or characters that were in like Fawcett comics and stuff, and then bringing them into current contemporary stories and then making them amazing. Like, they might not work outside of her writing or whenever they go off to do their other thing, but I just love that she does that. So, like, Lady Blackhawk was that way. Spy Smasher was that way. Savant was that way. So it's like she takes these characters and makes them... The character development is really great. I can't, like, gush about Gail Simone enough.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And on that note, like, what's amazing about that character development is her stuff doesn't feel decompressed.
Right.
There are these writers out there that are known for their character development, especially in dialogue. Brian Michael Bendis is one of these guys but at the same time, the pacing of his stories often feels super decompressed. Whereas her stuff is action-packed. I mean, I've talked about our work on Secret Six before and how I just think it's absolutely amazing. I was super excited about that. I kind of forgot about the connection. So I started reading this, and I was like, oh, shit, I remember why I love this.
I mean, you should... Some of her other stuff that she's done outside of, like, the major titles, because she's wrote Deadpool, too, but, I mean, like, The Cleaning Room, and, I mean, it's so good. All her stuff is really good, and I know she's making more stuff currently, so it's... I mean... You can't talk about Birds of Prey without talking about Gail Simone.
Yeah, to answer your question, who do I want as the core member of Birds of Prey? Gail Simone.
She is the Birds of Prey.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's Birds of Prey. Can't wait to see the movie and then do a review.
Hell yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at The Phantom Zone Pod for more podcast updates.